its lurk. She exposes, she ignites. With every post she does the work, unmasking darkness, revealing lights. Political cow, the beacon bright, unveiling truth, banishing night. With every post she does the work, unmasking darkness, revealing lights. Oh, what political cow, the beacon bright, unveiling truth, banishing night. Her voice cuts through, stark and raw, shattering deception, breaking the law. Breaking the law. Icons crumble, empires fall. She stands tall, fierce and cold. Her voice echoes a thunderous call. In the chaos, her strength unfolds. False prophets scatter, truth ascends. The world watches, mesmerized. Political cows, battle never ends. In her light, dark meets its demise. Political cow, the beacon bright, unveiling truth, banishing night. At every post she does the work, unmasking darkness, revealing lights. Political cow, the beacon bright, unveiling truth, banishing night. Her voice cuts through, stark and raw, shattering deception, breaking the law. Breaking the law. Political cow, political cow. Political cow, political cow. The beacon bright, unveiling truth, banishing night. Her voice cuts through, stark and raw, shattering deception, breaking the law. Breaking the law, breaking the law, breaking the law. Political cow. Icons crumble, empires fall. She stands tall, fierce and cold. Her voice echoes a thunderous call. In the chaos, her strength unfolds. False prophets scatter, truth ascends. The world watches, mesmerized. Political cows, battle never ends. And in her light, dark meets its demise. False prophets scatter, truth ascends. Truth ascends. The world watches, mesmerized. Political cows, battle never ends. In her light, dark meets its demise.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Looks like footage is just finishing up. Trying to see if I can find some of it. As I was getting online here, I mean, those protests are still going on in LA. It's a little crazy. It's a little crazy, getting out of hand in some cases, but not a lot of coverage, evidently, locally, other than through social media. That's where a lot of people are getting this content from. So if something pops up, we'll take a look at it. But want to kick things off. I appreciate everybody. We hit that 16.9 number last go around, almost at 17,000, which means only 83,000 from 100K. And I appreciate y'all for helping out with that. So I had a set of topics I was just going to kind of run through pretty quick, but the protests have got me kind of interested, just trying to scan around and see if anybody's got a good view into what's going on. You can't really get a whole lot of insights just looking at, just normal news channels. They don't really have what's going on posted, but kind of seeing, excuse me, yeah, the cough is still lingering. Seeing the people out there, seeing what the responses are to things, everything like that. This is one of the only means of really being able to do that out there. So as things pop up, we'll kind of jump over to it. But for now, I'm just going to stick to the script, I guess, right? I don't know. Don't buy the hype. There's about 39 people. They're not massive. There's different pockets of it jumping up. The interesting clip that I just saw, a person went offline. I was going to try and intercept the stream. They had they had a pretty significant police presence, kind of walking through the road to kind of keep things clean, keep things in a good state and orderly. Anyway, let me pause this thing. Taking up my bandwidth here. Let's see. Anything else come on? No protests. Who's this lady? That's not a protester. No protests. Bizarre. Protests. Los Angeles. Live. See anything going on here? No, see, I mean, a lot of these videos, okay, well, I'll just go back to the topic at hand. A lot of the videos seem to be, I guess maybe as you're saying it, Luna King, just to be, excuse me, one person in their car, then they zoom up on something. There was just one street that for about a 10-minute time frame there, as I was getting up and running, had a considerable amount of people and police presence, but that's since dissipated. It's not really much of anything to look at this point. But yeah, so what excuse me, guys. Topic at hand here. Topic at hand. There's a lot of talk on tariffs. Are they good? Are they bad? Are they going to destabilize our economy long term? A lot of discussion going on that front. And it's an interesting thing too, trying to catch conservatives in terms of tariffs being an anti-free market practice, but is it really a conservative move to not do something in favor of your country, your community, the people that you were elected to represent, right? I think there's a little bit of a variance there, so I thought that's an interesting dynamic to kind of talk through there. But I did want to, in the last live stream, folks voted on, getting a look at a little bit more detail as to what's inside of these tariffs. So I got some data on that. I just wanted to kind of share pretty quick, maybe clip some of that for some YouTube shorts coming up here as well. But let me see if I could size this a little bit better. It doesn't look like the sizing is turning out as good as I would like it to. What's going on with that? No, that's a little bit off there. I don't want it to be like that. Hang on. Bear with me, guys. Hold on. Sizing's getting weird on this. I don't know why. What is the deal? All right. Well, we'll have to go with this. And again, if you can, like, subscribe. Almost at 17,000. It's a little ridiculous to me. I can't even believe we're getting that far. All right. So without further ado, I was looking at some of the data points, right? Trump and his administration has published more details in terms of products and services that they would look to place tariffs on. And I think it's important to note, and again, if you want to see these notes, politicalcow.com, it's my stream notes. I just publish it all there. It's not extremely sophisticated. It's just literally my notes that I copy pasted onto the page there. So you could take a look at the numbers, references I have to other videos, and sources will be in there as well. But looking at what the tariffs are going to be placed on, I start to look at, what was there before this year and what's going to be there going forward. And I asked I did a little research into, drilling down into specific product categories. I don't know how folks can argue with some of this stuff, right? So here, just looking at China, the tariffs that are in place before Trump's election, and what they're going to flip into kind of going forward. There's only 5 about 5 categories that'll see significant change, and the rest of them, kind of on average, they'll fall within the same range that has been there for the past 8 years or so now. Um, so looking at it, a couple of key areas: electric vehicles, the importation of those electric vehicles from China. The tariff that was in place throughout the Biden administration was a 25% tariff. And now it's going to be shifting to 100%. There is energy security long term. There's a lot of technology dominance and so forth around that. And there's behaviors that we're pushing that we want to stop the importation of fentanyl. I don't know if you really want to call it importing. There's a lot of behaviors that we're looking to change how they manage intellectual property rights, respecting those intellectual property rights. A lot of things along those lines that we want to push for change on, right? Semiconductors, obviously, solar cells, steel and aluminum. And then this one was a funny one. Why do they point out medical surgical gloves specifically going from 7.5% to 25%? I didn't think it was that massive of a market to where it would be its own standalone category, but nevertheless, it's there. But if you start looking at it, right, semiconductors make sense, solar cells from 25 to 50%. The rest of it, though, right, keep in mind this tariff before 25 was everything in place during the Biden administration, which Trump did put in there. But the Biden administration did not rescind it. There was value in keeping it. We were driving behaviors with it. So now, excuse me. Now, of course, we're upping the game on things, right? Sorry, you're just listening to me cough here. We're upping the game on things, but we'll just have to keep a close eye on it because, I'm not going to go buy an electric car. Am I going to be impacted by that? No. Semiconductors, yeah, cell phones, everything's got a semiconductor of some kind in there. So that'll be an impact to a lot of people, whether we like that or not. But how much of an impact? Something that was $50 is now $55. Remains to be seen again. But we'll take a look at it in some videos in the long term, right? Or a little bit later on. This is the immediate impact of what's happening, is seeing these shifts in prices, and there's financial impact to China and to Canada and to Mexico, who those are the 3 biggest trade partners that we have. But long term, what's the behavior of business, right? When they have to deal with these disruptions to their supply chain potentially, they will reinvest those dollars in the United States to adjust the supply chains. They will produce more of these raw materials and products in the United States. It's not going to be a 1-for-1 in terms of jobs. One job in China is not going to equate to the same person here. There's going to be more automation, more sophisticated approaches to doing things the next go around, right? Because labor arbitrage that happened in the past 2 decades, they were just taking advantage of, again, cheap labor. But this next go around is going to be hyper automation. It's going to be AI. So taking advantage of that, the 1,000 people that comprise the factory out there may come back as 100. I don't know what the right number is. It depends on what is being created. But the investment of dollars, the need for those technicians to be here, long run, is that not good? It may be an interim period of time where businesses are disrupted in terms of their margins, and they likely won't be able to pass that cost on to consumers. But from a self-sufficiency standpoint, is this not a good thing long term, to secure those resources and secure that manufacturing base here? It seems like that would be a principle that liberals of the past would have ascribed to, but it seems now that liberalism is actually within the Republican Party. It's actually not a Democrat principle. Let's see, Una King says, Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, just announced that there will be no sales in Ontario of any American product. Any currently on store shelves will be removed by Tuesday. So it's interesting too. Looking at the report, or not the report, the fact sheet. So if you go to here, let me pull it up. White House's website real quick. WhiteHouse.gov. Oops, that was my form. Hold on. WhiteHouse.gov, and by my form, I applied to be one of their new media, to be on the new media desk that they just created. All right, let me share this real quick. So the White House has a pretty interesting page going now, where they fact sheets. All right, let's bring them up. Fact sheet: President Donald Trump imposes tariffs on imports from China, Canada, Mexico, and China. And they dive into a good bit of detail as to why they're doing these things, what they're going to hit. While trade accounts for that much of Canada's GDP, 73% of that, and it's accountable for only 25% of U.S. Highlighting our trade deficit. And in here, one thing that they did make note of, and again, I'll make sure that the links are in the stream notes. One thing they did say is if Canada does push back, or China or Mexico, and put tariffs on America's products, then there will be further tariffs imposed on those countries. So I guess the actions being taken on Ontario, and Justin Trudeau came out there today, very, very strangely give a talk about how they will impose 25% tariffs as well. That 25 that got put on Canada might turn into 35. It'll keep going up. So Trump is willing to push the envelope here with these things. So just going back to the list here, so you go to politicalcow.com. It's stream notes for episode 44 that we're in right now. I said 44, right? I hope I labeled it correctly. Did I say 44? Yeah, 44, good. This is the list from China. I don't know why this one got blacked out. Okay, from Mexico. So the key with Mexico and Canada, I wanted to try to understand what was new and what was an existing tariff that was in place. Sorry, guys, I apologize. I haven't been coughing all day, and then I start coughing here as I start talking a bunch. But there was not a lot of existing tariffs in place. So a lot of these 25s that you see here, automobile parts, agriculture products, textiles, liquor, steel and aluminum, there was a pre-existing one, 10%. That's going to continue. But most of it is new, right? Most of that stuff's new. And again, what happens at that point? The cost may even out with products in the United States. Consumers will buy less. You may turn to products that come from a different country that we have a better relationship with. And then you look at here, Canada, the United States. Oh, that's actually not new. The dairy one was also pre-existing. Yeah, I got that one wrong there. But they had existing tariffs out there on paper products, pharmaceuticals, steel and aluminum. But you see the 25 hitting the auto parts, liquor. From the analysis, it seems like foreign car manufacturers like Volkswagen and Nissan, who have major plants in Canada and Mexico, they're going to have big time issues with this because they're not a US-based company and they're importing from Mexico effectively. They might get hit, a couple times here with tariffs and stuff. So there may be an incentive for them in the next few years to invest in new plants, manufacturing that happens in the United States to get around these high levels of tariffs, right? 25%. I mean, would that 25% result in like a 10% cost increase if you don't manufacture it outside of the States? I mean, they may look to invest just to get that reduced to some degree for them. Otherwise, their supply chain will completely be disrupted. They will lose massive amounts of market share. So that's kind of where the different categories of the tariffs are hitting. And then I was actually interested in what is, the total that we're importing from these countries. So you could see close to 400 billion each, Mexico and Canada, China almost 600 billion. And with the average tariff that we're putting on things now being about 25%, I was like, all right, well, how much money is that actually coming back to us in the form of these tariffs? Like point forward, these are fully implemented. They run for a year. What is that estimate? So you see the individual numbers here. I don't know why this is not showing up that good as part of the stream, but the total is about $340 billion. $340 billion of revenue coming to the United States through the imposition of these tariffs. And you start to look at, our budget for 2025. Like, what would, 350 billion pay for? It would take care of all these welfare programs. That's 250 billion. It would take care of this particular category of education. I mean, it would pay for, just under a third of national defense. So you start to look at this. I mean, it's not going to take care of interest on the debt, which is a sad reality, but you start to look at this and it's like, like those tariffs would cover quite a bit of cost here. Are there other mechanisms that the government can get monies through the system to pay for this budget rather than directly hitting our income taxes constantly over and over again? Right. And so there's this guy, Robert Lightzinger, who's just some notes I took on him. Pretty interesting stuff. He was
many of you may be thinking you're
he was a I think a trade advisor for Trump. Is that right? Let me look at my notes again here. What was he? Oh, trade representative. Okay. Close enough for me. But he is a huge proponent of tariffs and leveraging them as a financial tool. And he started getting me going on the thought process of, conservatism and free markets and tariffs. These things are not necessarily mutually exclusive. And the idea of America First is, for the most part, to help with these types of scenarios. Tom says, I'd love to see more help for small business in conjunction with these tariffs. Yeah, I'd like to hear some bright ideas with that as well.
Conservatives, and conservatives are for free trade. Actually, there is nothing conservative about free trade.
So even just this opening remark here, and he's speaking to, what is this? Account again. No, I can't find it. It's some academic institute, but even that first line around free trade is not, a principle of conservatism, right? Paul, that's Paul. A lot of us are sad about that too. I'm sad because I'm losing content. There's a considerable amount of content out there, which I just posted a Trudeau video. I'll show you guys in a minute, but you lose a lot of content. Suffice to say.
What exactly are these people conserving? Free trade is a philosophy of consumption. And the elevation of consumption is the essence of materialism. Materialism fosters the neglection of values. It is the exact opposite of conservatism. Near the center of conservative thought is preserving what is best in our institutions and traditions. It is about the very values materialists would have us ignore. Free traders seek price optimization. They view us only as consumers and want to maximize consumption.
All right, so that's an interesting aspect, the focus. I mean, you've probably heard of supply side economics quite a bit over the years, and how that's an elitist thing. It's for billionaires, right? And the consumption part, right, is the mentality that's it's a different thought process. Are you going to create something? Are you going to put ample product out there to satisfy the demand or to create more value for people, increase wealth or increase standard of living? I mean, think of something basic as water, access to water for everybody. That immediately ups the standard of living for folks in general. And so this mindset of, am I going to constantly be a consumer, or am I going to be a producer and create? There's a fundamental difference in terms of the mindset and principle that stands behind it, and it runs through the economic thought process here too. And so he'll talk through it a little bit, but it puts you kind of at an interesting thought. It's like, do you just consume and you just fall into these traps of media and the hype and everything else, or are you contributing towards something? And then you think about that in terms of the principles behind conservatism, principles behind traditional liberalism, which effectively is modern conservatism at this point.
And that means lots.
And I appreciate it, Tom, too. I did apply. We'll see. They've had 7,500 applicants, and I mean, they had Axios in there. They've had some other individual influencers come into the room, and just they've only had a couple of times now. They've had different people be in there. So I don't know. We'll see. Fingers crossed. Hopefully I get selected.
Lots of imports. I believe that Americans are first producers, not consumers, and that no country ever became great by consuming. They all became great by producing. Many economists believe that we should have a free trade policy that produces the lowest price goods, and then we should enact programs like welfare or unemployment payments to deal with the negative effects this has on our citizens.
I mean, this guy, it's interesting thought process. You think through it, right? Create the lowest price goods at any cost. And I'm trying to think of a different word than cost, but like no matter what, make everything as cheaply as possible, right? And then the Democrat side of things will be like, oh, but then it'll be affordable for everybody. But guess what? If you don't have any money, it doesn't matter how cheap something is. Somebody doesn't have a job because they got sent to a manufacturing facility elsewhere, and that small town that basically ran around that plant, doesn't really matter how cheap that is. They're not going to buy that trinket because there is no money to buy it with. I'm sure they would have rather paid, $5 instead of $1 and still had that livelihood. So, I mean, if you listen to some of the podcasts and some of the reporting that Tucker Carlson does, he makes the same point on these things. So, I mean, there's been questions posed to him of, hey, like AI, autonomous driving has advanced considerably. At some point in the near future here, very likely it's going to displace, drivers. You're not going to need to have truck drivers and so forth. It'll just all be autonomous. But he stops them right there and says, there's absolutely no way I would allow that to happen. And it catches people off guard because you would think, oh, he's for free trade, he's a capitalist, so forth. But fundamentally for him, the idea is that you don't want to take, jobs away from millions of people overnight and hand them over to machines like that. You need to think of a meaningful way to transition and, sustain people's livelihoods. That's more important than, kind of blazing through technological progress in that way. So there needs to be balance. In the same vein, though, there can't be waste. There can't be doing things just to, provide people with a job when there's not really a need, right? Some of the actions that Doge is taking, offering people severance for 7 months if they would voluntarily leave their positions. So efficiency is one thing. Looking at things through this lens of being a producer, creating value, bringing that value to society, your community, the country. Those are the fundamental principles of behind what free markets were supposed to drive and create for us. Free markets were not, as he's pointing out, intended to drive towards the lowest price possible. It was to allow innovation to thrive organically, to allow people to produce organically without being restricted, right? That opportunity to create something, that opportunity to bring value. So our system as it stands right now is not functioning in that way. And we need to do things to change it. And one of the things that, it's many things, but one of the key ones is around how international trade happens, where we get taken advantage of quite a bit. And so that's why there's so much talk around tariffs at this point in time, is because that is a mechanism to reset things, to get us back on an equal footing. Or honestly, put us at the advantage.
Our country. We believe that is exactly upside down. Our primary objective should be policies that will build strong American families and communities and create productive, high-paying jobs. That should be our goal, not cheap stuff. In a policy choice between corporate profits and American jobs, we should always protect our workers. We should never forget that there is an inherent value in work and the pride that comes from supporting your family. This pride builds communities, and it should not be sacrificed for TV sets or T-shirts. This is the essence of conservatism, and making America great is the core of patriotism. We are conserving values, the American family and strong communities. That's what Ronald Reagan wanted. That's what Donald Trump fought for. Indeed, Alexander Hamilton, arguably the father of American conservative, was no free trader. His whole life he supported tariffs and industrial policy to promote American manufacturing. In fact, throughout our early history, conservatives and Republicans were not free traders. There were 12 Republican presidents before Eisenhower, and everyone promoted using tariffs to build American industry. They all supported the American system, explicitly or implicitly. Theodore Roosevelt famously said, "Thank God I am not a free trader. In this country, pernicious indulgence in the doctrine of free trade seems inevitably to produce fatty degeneration of the moral fiber." I subscribe to that view, in case you were wondering. The Gilded Age was a period of Republican ascendancy, relatively high tariffs, and monstrous economic growth. After World War II, President Eisenhower was far less concerned with building American industry. Our economy was the only significant one in the world, and he correctly wanted to see Europe and Asia rebuilt, the establishment of democratic governments, and the defeat of communism. President Nixon was for market economics, but then when there was a growing trade deficit and a run on our gold, he put tariffs on all of our imports and kept them there until our trading partners agreed to raise the dollar value of gold. Ronald Reagan spoke of free trade, but he insisted on limits on the number of Japanese cars coming into the United States. He protected our semiconductor industry. He required limits on steel imports, defended Harley-Davidson motorcycles, and trust me, I was there. I could go on. In fact, one libertarian group said that he was the most protectionist president since Herbert Hoover. No Republican president was really a free trader, with the possible exception of the Bushes, and even 43 put tariffs on steel to save our industry. Finally, let me ask you this. Many of you have taken economics classes in college. Probably all of your professors preach free trade. How many of them were conservatives? My guess is not many.
I don't know about y'all, but in my case, it was zero. There were none.
If you say you had a lot, then like Johnny, you probably went to Hillsdale College. Another myth is that trade makes the world more peaceful and democratic. You've all heard it. This view was the common wisdom of the cognoscenti of the 1990s. President Clinton and his free trade crowd used this myth to sell their China policy. With access to our market, China would become a larger version of Switzerland. That's what they argued, benign and democratic. Thomas Friedman wrote a book selling the proposition that countries that trade don't make war. Not even Friedman believes that anymore. The principal problem with this proposition is that there is no support for it in history. World trade was an astonishing 21% of GDP in 1913. And that didn't stop the Great War from beginning. The US and Japan had substantial trade before Pearl Harbor. The North and the South had enormous trade before the American Civil War. And of course, Ukraine and Russia had much trade and economic connections. And that didn't stop Putin from rolling his tanks in. Let's consider another myth. We were taught that trade deficits don't matter. We have heard this from economists and newspaper editorial boards forever. It is true that if you run a trade deficit one year and a surplus the next, they may net out. Likewise, running a surplus with one country and a deficit with another likely won't matter. But that is not what has happened to America. We have been running deficits of hundreds of billions of dollars year in and year out for decades. These trillions of dollars come back in the form.
So I'm going to switch over to my AI real quick, just to give you guys a synopsis of modern monetary theory, because that's effectively what he's talking about here. Modern monetary theory, which includes the idea of trade deficits. You can go like crazy on them. You can rack up debt. There's no big deal. You could print your own money, so you can always solve your own problems because you have that printing button. It's bizarre, right? Absolutely bizarre. Let me get it going here. One sec, guys. Hey, can you give a summary of modern monetary theory for the live stream viewers?
Sure thing. Here's a quick breakdown. Modern monetary theater, often shorthanded as MMT, proposes that governments that control their own currency can and should create more money to fund public spending. Instead of focusing on deficits and debts, MMT argues that the real concern should be inflation. As long as a country isn't facing high inflation, it can afford to spend more to achieve full employment and other social goals. It's a pretty radical rethinking of traditional economic theaters, shaking up a lot of established ideas.
Can you give the live stream viewers a summary of classical liberalism as it relates to modern monetary theory?
All right, let's dive in. Classical liberalism, born from the Enlightenment era, emphasizes individual liberty, free markets, and limited government. It argues that economies function best when individuals are free to pursue their own interests with minimal government interference. Now, contrasting this with modern monetary theater, which suggests a more involved role for government in economic affairs, we see a departure from the laissez-faire principles. MMT welcomes government intervention to manage economic stability, whereas classical liberalism prefers the invisible hand of the market to guide economic decisions. So, classical liberalism, minimal government interference. Modern monetary theater, proactive government involvement.
Last question I got for you. Isn't it odd how the role of liberalism has shifted over the years?
Yeah, it's fascinating how it's evolved. Classical liberalism focused on individual freedoms, minimal government, and free markets. Over time, with the rise of social liberalism in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the term began to incorporate more ideas about using government power to address economic and social issues. Today, liberalism can mean vastly different things depending on the context, ranging from advocacy of free markets to support for social welfare programs. It shows how political and economic ideas morph over time. Interesting stuff.
All right. So just quick summary. It does a better job than I to bring those things together quickly. But that's the bizarre thing now, right? That liberals have moved away from the idea of limited government or government acting in a very finite capacity. And this idea of free trade, free markets that so-called liberals or Democrats have pushed back on for so long, all of a sudden they're major proponents of. You have to ask yourself why. Why is that? Why do they want to drive towards the lowest cost of everything? Why are they not driving towards the greatest value and benefit for the country and for individuals? There's a question asked a little bit ago on small business and how this correlates. I think this idea is directly correlated to it. I just don't have a good answer as to how it all connects. I'm gonna make a note of that, see where people are going with it, because it should be thought with Small Business Administration and a lot of the other government focuses that are out there. But anyway, let's let this gentleman complete his thought.
Form of foreigners owning American assets. Come back for decades. These trillions of dollars come back in the form of foreigners owning American assets permanently. There is a statistic called the net international investment position. How much Americans own abroad, equity, debt, and property, versus how much foreigners own of America. The United States net international investment, foreigners own $16 trillion more here than we own around the whole world. And there is a negative compounding. Foreigners, including China, own these assets and the future income of these assets. We literally are trading the wealth of our country, the ownership of our...
Yeah, and I apologize, guys. The clip does freeze here, so I'll just let him complete this thought and we'll move on.
Our equity, debt, and property for Christmas tree lights and toys, for tennis shoes and garden tools. We are bleeding to death from self-inflicted wounds. So, do massive consecutive trade deficits matter? Only if you care who owns and controls your country. There's another myth. We're told that America is post-industrial. We don't need manufacturing. You've all heard it. We're going to have a services economy. This, too, is balderdash. We have the biggest economy in the world. We need to make and grow things. It is true that manufacturing jobs make up only about 11% of our employment. But these jobs, in turn, spin off millions of other jobs in the services sector, for example. Think accounting, advertising, transportation. Further, disproportionately innovation and productivity and exports are in manufacturing and not services. 65% of research and development is in manufacturing. 92% of our exports are in this sector. And 42% of productivity growth is in the manufacturing sector compared to only 24% for services. And generally, manufacturing jobs pay better. The median manufacturing job pays $22.50 an hour. The equivalent number for retail is $14.30. For hospitality, it's $13.70. And for administrative services, $17.50.
And the big variance is level of skill and experience between those roles in order to operate as a technician and a lot of these things in these manufacturing facilities. It just requires a higher degree of experience and skill to hit those levels.
Also, manufacturing workers, on average, receive far better benefits and stay in their jobs longer. But most importantly, 60% of American workers have only a high school education. Their best chance to get into the middle class is through manufacturing. If we want strong communities and an innovative economy, we need more manufacturing jobs and the related jobs that that sector creates.
So I'll pause it right there for him. So again, bottom line, free trade does not mean lowest costs. I think it's a misnomer. So applying those conservative principles, like, do we want to push people to be consumers? Do we want to push folks to be producers and create, right? Create through their labors and allow that to be a venue and an opportunity for them to have good livelihoods that come out of it. That's the variance that we're talking about, and I think the election gave a pretty clear message as to what side of that story the country is falling on at this point. We can't just continue to spend, and when people say continue to spend, it's more along the lines of continue to print. It's not just the spend part. We're spending outsized amounts of money. The budget has to balance. Clinton said that I balanced the budget. He just happened to be there when the dot-com boom happened and markets went crazy. There was massive growth, real growth, not the inorganic growth that's happened with all the quantitative easing that's occurred during the Obama administration. And again, the printing press that ensued with Joe Biden. Real growth happened then. Whether it was Al Gore that created the internet or not. And if you don't remember that reference, it's out there. So as a consequence of that, we had a surplus in our budget. I mean, if there's just more revenue being produced, more, value to the assets, the same percentage of tax will just result in a higher amount of money coming into the government. And so now we're in a bit of a different scenario where growth has had to be fueled through all this money printing, and we need to unwind that. The system is broken. How do you unwind that properly without causing massive disruption? How do you enable proper wage growth to happen without that becoming unnatural and dictating wages, like minimum wage? Minimum wage should be $50 an hour, whatever it is they want it to be now. I know it's not that; it's considerably less. But how do you create the system to work? Because all Biden did was print, like $4 trillion and inject it into an already broken system. What did you expect would happen? Right? Let me go, before we go to Kristi Noem here, Trump spoke to reporters very briefly here as
follow and engage with.
He was coming back from, I think it was at Martha's Vineyard. There we go. And he's going to touch on some of the trade. And again, remember, the administration said very clearly that if there are retaliatory tariffs that are put on the United States, they're going to increase the tariffs that they've just implemented. They'll just keep going up.
Thank you very much, Joe. We had a very busy weekend. We got the 6 hostages out of Venezuela, as you probably know. And they're very safe right now. They're home with their families. And we appreciate the hard work of a lot of people, including Rick Grinnell. We appreciate the cooperation from Venezuela. And we have some very happy people right now. Nobody thought that was going to happen. So they are home, they're safe, and they're with their families. That was a big one. Secretary of State Rubio is in Panama right now, and we're talking about the Panama Canal. What they've done is terrible. They violated the agreement. They're not allowed to violate the agreement. China's running the Panama Canal. That was not given to China, that was given to Panama foolishly, but they violated the agreement, and we're going to take it back or something very powerful is going to happen. And as far as other things are concerned, as you know, we had a very busy weekend. We're dealing with Israel, we're dealing with Ukraine and Russia. We have meetings and talks scheduled with various parties, including Ukraine and Russia. And I think those discussions are actually going pretty well. The discussions on the Middle East with Israel and various and sundry other countries are progressing. Bibi Netanyahu's coming on Tuesday, and I think we have some very big meetings scheduled.
Mr. President, do you feel that Elon Musk is delivering on his promises to you? Do you feel he's doing a good job right now with
I do. I think Elon's doing a good job. He's a big cost cutter. Sometimes we won't agree with it and will not go where he wants to go, but I think he's doing a great job. He's a smart guy, very smart, and he's very much into cutting the budget of our federal government.
Mr. President.
He's also retaliatory tariffs from Canada.
Say it?
He's also retaliatory tariffs from Canada. There was a rider in the order. Are you planning to increase the tariffs against Canada?
Well, it could happen. If they do anything, we will. Canada's been very abusive of the United States for many years. They don't allow our banks. Did you know that? Canada does not allow banks to go in. If you think about it, that's pretty amazing. If we have a U.S. bank, they don't allow them to go in. Canada's been very tough on oil, on energy. They don't allow our farm products in, essentially. They don't allow a lot of things in, and we allow everything to come in. It's been a one-way street. We subsidize Canada by the tune of about $200 billion a year. And for what? What do we get out of it? We don't get anything out of it. I love the people of Canada. I disagree with the leadership of Canada. And something's going to happen there. But if they want to play the game, I don't mind. We can play the game all they want. Mexico,
There you
we've
go.
had very good talks with them. And this is retaliatory. This is retaliatory to a certain extent. Millions of people flowed into our country through Mexico and Canada, and we're not going to allow that. And by the way, we have among the lowest numbers we've ever had of people crossing our border, the lowest numbers since my administration.
Mr. President, you said, so on Truth Social, you said that you were going to cut aid from South Africa. Will you plan to cut aid across other African nations, and why South Africa?
No, it's only South Africa. Terrible things are happening in South Africa. The leadership is doing some terrible things, horrible things. So that's under investigation right now. We'll make a determination. And until such time as we find out what South Africa is doing, they're taking away land, they're confiscating land, and actually they're doing things that are perhaps far worse than that.
And on the Fed Chair Jerome Powell, he held rates. What's your reaction to him not changing the rates?
What did you say?
Fed Chair Jerome Powell, the Fed meeting was this week. He held the rates. He didn't cut them.
No,
or
I'm not
anything.
surprised. I think holding the rates at this point was the right thing to do.
Mr. President, which country will be next on tariffs? Would you consider taxing the UK, for example?
Well, we're going to see what happens. It'll happen. But we're going to, we'll see how things work out. It might happen with them, but it will definitely happen with the European Union. I can tell you that, because they've really taken advantage of us. And, you know, we have over a $300 billion deficit. They don't take our cars. They don't take our farm products. They take almost nothing. And we take everything from them. Millions of cars, tremendous amounts of food and farm products. So the UK is way out of line, and we'll see. The UK, but European Union is really out of line. UK is out of line, but I'm sure that one, I think that one can be worked out. But the European Union it's an atrocity, what they've done.
Prime Minister Starmer wants a closer relationship with the EU. So
Well, Prime Minister Starmer has been very nice. We've had a couple of meetings. We've had numerous phone calls. We're getting along very well. And we'll see whether or not we can balance out our budget. With the European Union, it's $350 billion deficit. So obviously something's going to take place there.
follow up on this, for the European Union, what's your timeline? And are you thinking
Where?
along
Where?
the line 25%, 10%?
With who? With who?
The EU, how much?
I wouldn't say there's a timeline, but it's going to be pretty soon. No, I'm not concerned. We may have short-term some little pain, and people understand that, but long-term, the United States has been ripped off by virtually every country in the world. We have deficits with almost every country, not every country, but almost. And we're going to change it. It's been unfair. That's why we owe $36 trillion. We have deficits with everybody. We help everybody. We've been helping everybody for years. And to be honest, I don't think they appreciate it. So we're going to change that. We're going to change it fast. We're going to make America great again. We have to focus on our country. We have tremendous potential if properly used, and we have to focus on our country. Tremendous deficits with China, tremendous deficits with the European Union, tremendous deficits with Mexico and Canada. And why? What's the purpose of that? Why would we have deficits? And you look at, if you look at pharmaceuticals and drugs, if you look at various products, it's much cheaper in other countries. We're not going to allow that much longer. We're not going to take it.
What's going on there?
Well, it's been run by a bunch of radical lunatics, and we're getting them out. USAID, run by radical lunatics, and we're getting them out, and then we'll make a decision.
Sorry, who did he say was running USAID again?
Lunatics, and we're getting them out. USAID, run by radical lunatics, and we're getting them out, and then we'll make a decision.
Mr. President, have you spoken with anyone from Canada or from Mexico since you opposed?
I've spoken with people from Canada, I've spoken with people from Mexico, and I've spoken to a lot of other people too.
Prime Minister Trudeau or
I'm speaking with Prime Minister Trudeau tomorrow morning, and I'm also speaking with Mexico tomorrow morning. And I don't expect anything very dramatic. We put tariffs on. They owe us a lot of money, and I'm sure they're going to pay.
Would you send troops to take the Canal of Panama?
About what?
Panama, the Canal of Panama. Would you send US troops?
I don't think troops will be necessary in Panama. What Panama has done is terrible for national security for this part of the world. And, 70% of the signage on the Panama Canal was written in Chinese. That's not right. So it wasn't meant for China. It should have never been made. The deal was a ridiculous deal. We lost 38,000 people building the Panama Canal, one of the great wonders of the world. 38, think of it, 38. It was the most expensive project ever built by this country, if you take it forward. The most expensive project ever built. We lost 38,000. And what happens? China owns it all of a sudden? It's not going to happen. We're not going to let that happen. We have national security concerns, and they wouldn't let it happen either.
Mr. President, what does Canada and Mexico need to do for you to lift the tariffs? What are specifically you want?
They'd have to balance out their trade, number one. They've got to stop people from pouring into our country, and we've stopped it. They haven't stopped it. We've stopped it. They have to stop people from pouring in, and we have to stop fentanyl, and that includes China. Fentanyl has killed this year at least 200,000 people. It's pouring in from China through Mexico and Canada, and they've got to stop it. And if they don't stop it, the tariffs are going to get worse, a lot worse.
Mr. President, I'm going to the border.
And that is that. He clearly had a specific time in mind that he was going to be speaking, and then that's it. He's going to move on from there. So outlined, some pretty good things, behaviors that he wants to see changed. There is communication continuing between the countries, which is probably a good thing, and driving towards a better outcome and scenario for the United States is a bottom line, right? Let me go over here. Actually, let me share this for a second, guys. Help me out a little bit if you can. And hey, if you want to jump in and share your thoughts, I do have a link pinned in the chat, in the pinned chat. I've got a link to the guest call-in line if you guys want to jump in there. I just have one more thing I wanted to show here. Where'd it go? Come on. All right, almost there, guys, almost. All right, here we go. And this was Trump actually at the point of signing those executive orders. So share this. Let's just double check that it's looking good. And let's go ahead and play it.
This is an executive order called Unleashing Prosperity Through Deregulation. So it slashes unnecessary regulations, which will put more money in Americans' pockets, unleash economic growth, and guarantee that the United States of America...
Oh, wait, hang on a second. These are the pure executive orders I'm looking for. Oh, that's weird. Sounds like this one should be the one on the tariffs, but it's not. Unusual. Well, the thing I wanted to demonstrate was the consistency with which I don't have the right one loaded up here. I don't want to spend too much time having you guys watch me search for it, but the consistency with which Trump is kind of walking through his position and holding the way he's going to hold people accountable. I think it's pretty remarkable the level of consistency that we see here with what he says he's going to do, and then he actually follows through and is doing it. And now it's responding to changes that's coming up. He's got upcoming meetings with Trudeau and with President of Mexico. I don't know what further will happen with China, but that remains to be seen as well. All right, let me get this thing up here. Hang on. Boom. All right. So my most recent video, Trudeau just does this to himself. Actually, I might flip through some of my my YouTube shorts here. You guys tell me what you think. Now, where have I heard this before?
Tonight, first, I want to speak directly to Americans. I want to close by asking all the moms to step out of the room for a minute so I can talk to your kids. I'll give you a second.
I mean, you imagine our president saying something like that? I don't know. Biden actually did, didn't he? Talking about the pool incident and stuff like that. I don't know. He got a little weird already on us. Plenty weird.
Baby, there we go. Give it a good pull. And Vineland's defense.
What happened?
Oh,
you
no.
good with this?
What? Baby.
I think this guy is a genius.
I'm not going back to Haiti. Well, he's wrong. He's going back to Haiti.
Blast the lights, everyone knows the drill.
Baby.
If you're not using
I think this guy is a genius.
Let's sell everything we have. Give it to a coyote. Won't that be fun? Let's go.
All right. I'll stop it there. So check out my page. A lot of fun shorts and stuff. It's getting a little bit late for me. I'm going to have to close this down. But just follow-ups on the confirmation hearings. A lot of that stuff is coming up again. Will be coming up again this week. The interesting thing to me is that they keep pushing Tulsi Gabbard as the one that's in danger and not likely to be confirmed. I think absolutely bizarre. And the line of all the confirmation hearings, Bernie Sanders asking RFK if he supports the if he supports the message on the onesie was just remarkable stuff. I mean, you couldn't write that. That was just some of the most ridiculous stuff I've ever seen. All right, thanks guys for jumping in. It was just I was trying to do a quick one, but it looks like I stayed on for over an hour now. I was trying to do just like 30 minutes or something, but probably too verbose on my part. We'll continue to look at the tariffs, but I mean, as you guys can see, it's targeting very specific industries that are impacting us in the United States. Ford, GM, electric vehicles in general. Something pretty significant in terms of our national security. A lot of other agricultural raw materials that are going to be also looked at pretty closely. So anyway, more to come on that, and more to come on confirmations this coming week. But I'm interested once one of these nominees, once they take some significant action, what that's going to be. Like, just imagine Kash Patel. Like, what's it going to be once he makes his first major move, or Pam Bondi in terms of DOJ or DHS or what have you. Which DHS actually is doing something pretty big, doing all the raids right now that are happening, and the protests that are happening across the country. Well, 2 places. I heard South Carolina and Los Angeles. Can't really vouch for anywhere else because I haven't seen any videos that support it. But all right, guys, closing it out. Thank you for joining. See you next time.
Darkness falls, truth emerges. Political cow unveils the lies. Behind the screen, wisdom surges, lighting up hate with her eyes. In the shadows, secrets lurk. She exposes, she ignites. With every post, she does the work, unmasking darkness, revealing lights. Political cow, the beacon bright, unveiling truth, banishing night. With every post, she does the work, unmasking darkness, revealing lights. Oh, what? Political cow, the beacon bright, unveiling truth, banishing night. Her voice cuts through, stark and raw, shattering deception, breaking the law. Icons crumble, empires fall. She stands tall, fierce and cold. Her voice echoes a thunderous call. In the chaos, her strength unfolds. False prophets scatter, truth ascends. The world watches, mesmerized. Political cow's battle never ends. In her light, dark meets its demise. Political cow, the beacon bright, unveiling truth, banishing light. At every post, she does the work, unmasking darkness, revealing lights. Political cow, the beacon bright, unveiling truth, banishing night. Her voice cuts through, stark and raw, shattering deception, breaking the law. Political cow, political cow. Political cow, political cow. The beacon bright, unveiling truth, banishing night. Her voice cuts through, stark and raw, shattering deception, breaking the law. Breaking the law, breaking the law, breaking the law. Political cow, icons crumble, empires fall. She stands tall, fierce and cold. Her voice echoes a thunderous call. In the chaos, her strength unfolds. False prophets scatter, truth ascends. The world watches, mesmerized. Political cow's battle never ends. And in her light, dark meets its demise.